welcome everyone here today. Members of the public are advised that recommendations to Council contained within this agenda can be subject to alterations. Applicants and other interested parties should refrain from taking any action until such time as written advice is received confirming Council's decision with respect to any particular issue. Any statement or insinuation of approval regarding any planning or development application made during an ordinary council meeting is not to be taken as notice of approval from the Shire. The Shire advises that anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by Council regarding the application. Acknowledgement of country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and their cultures and to elders both past and present. Item 2, record of apologies and leave of absence is nil. Item 3, applications for leave of absence. Nil. Item 4, reading from a book of learning and wisdom. Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you. We are cups constantly and quietly being filled. The trick is knowing how to tip ourselves over and let the beautiful stuff out. By Ray Bradbury.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Item 5, declarations of members and officers' personal interest. Councillor Beach.
Thank you, sir. Item 12.5.1, Harvey Community Sporting Facility, the Boundaries Memorandum of Understanding. I am Council Representative on the Harvey Rec Cultural Centre Advisory Committee. Declare an impartiality interest and vote on the matter on its merits. And the following item, 12.5.2, I know a number of the nominees personally, and I'm also chair of the Harvey Australia Day Breakfast Committee that submitted an application. Again, impartiality interest, and I'll deal with the matter on its merits.
Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Mr. President. Item 12.5.2, the Australia Day Awards. I declare an impartiality interest as I know a couple of the nominees, and I will consider it on its merits and remain in the chambers.
Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Mr. President. 12.3.1, I'll declare an impartiality interest for the extension to existing use not listed Harvey Farm Service. It was many years ago, but they did sponsor some events that I was involved with, so I will declare an impartiality interest and stay in chambers to vote on its merits. And 12.5.2, Australia Day Awards. One of the candidates is well known to me, but they have not been shortlisted. However, I will still declare an impartiality interest. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. Can I declare a financial interest in both 12.1.1 and 12.3.6? That is the South West Highway Tourism Drive proposal and the, get the name of it, the proposed tourism development strategy, as I have a registered tourism business in the Shire of Harvey.
Councillor Lovett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 12.5.2, I'll declare an impartiality interest as I was listed as a referee for one of the nominations without my knowledge, but I'll stay in chambers and vote on its merits.
Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Impartiality for 12.1.1, the South West Highway Tourism Drive proposal. I'm the Shire Delegate for the Harvey Visitor Centre. And also 12.3.6, the proposed tourism development strategy and visiting, servicing and signage strategy. Again, I'm the council delegate for the Harvey Visitor Centre. And also 12.5.2, Australia Day Awards. A couple of the nominees are known to me, so impartiality, and I'll stay in chambers and vote accordingly.
Councillor Burgoyne.
Yeah, along with half the council, I declare an impartiality interest in 12.5.2, the Australia Day Awards. Three of the nominees are known to me quite well. But I'll declare that impartiality, stay in chambers and vote on its merits.
And I too will declare an impartiality interest in 12.5.1, Harvey Community and Sporting Facility, the Boundary, with the MOU, as I too am council rep on the HRCC Advisory Committee, and I will stay in chambers and vote on its merits. Yes. Okay, item 6, response to previous questions taken on notice is nil. Item 7, public question time. Any? Nil. Item 8, public question or petition? Petition or deputation? Public question? Yep, certainly.
Couple of issues. I've been contacting the Shire since March of this year about a resident in our area that has put staff pickets on his road verge that are very dangerous. You cannot see them at night time. They're a huge risk for people that are walking, riding. So this is since March that we've been trying to deal with this. He's an aggro man who abuses us, and so it's right at a bus stop. So you can't open your door to let kids out. It's our only bus stop in the area for our kids for Hope. I've got the school bus services guidelines has stated that all is mandatory for all school age kids in pre-primary to be dropped off and picked up, so we have to be there. Parking is an issue with the star pickets, and there's just nowhere to park. So what I got was that we were to park on the road, but it's unsafe to park on the road because we've got driveways, we've got roundabouts, we've got intersections, and we've got battle axe boxes and other stuff that just, it doesn't make it practical. You've got 2 school buses in the morning, so you're parking on the road, you're stopping all that traffic. I've got the Shire description of an obstruction to the thoroughfare, so why hasn't this been dealt with since March? Yeah.
Taken the staff pickets down for like a 2-week period and then gone back up again. We've caught him having parties and having people parking on his verge, so it's not as if there's an issue of people on his verge. I don't know whether it's...
If you do park there, he turns his bore water on you.
He turns his sprinklers on.
And he will come out and abuse you and call you multiple names under the sun in front of our children. So it's a huge issue. We're not doing any damage. We're not parking as such. We're not hopping out of our car and leaving our car for the day. We're merely just stopping to pick up kids from the school bus. So, yeah, I've got a fair few text messages and emails that have been going since March. Okay? So, yeah.
Mr. Lotsticker?
Yeah, look, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm aware of the issue. And look, parking on verge, it's a tricky one. Our parking facilities local law basically says that you can't park on an adjoining verge without the owner's permission. It's something we'll have to follow up. Obviously, there's an issue there, and we have asked them to remove the pickets. He obviously removes them, puts them back in. You can have little wooden stakes there when you're establishing a lawn and stuff like that. So look, we're just going to have to follow it up. I'll have a discussion with the manager of Ranger and Safety Services. We might have to go out and have a meeting with this gentleman and look at some options. You know, is there a better location for the bus stop if this doesn't go away? Is there some formalise some parking on the road? I don't know, but look, we'll take it on board, and we'll follow it up.
Kids to witness that, us being abused by someone who's screaming, obscenities, and when we're just literally picking up kids.
Yeah, well, that's really a police matter. I mean, however, in terms of the pickets, I agree they are a danger, and you shouldn't have them on a verge.
Seen them?
No, I haven't been out there. No.
So I'd like suggest for everybody to drive past and have a look at the pickets.
They're not capped.
Because
They're not.
they're
They're just star pickets all throughout.
basically, yeah. 12 Branson Road in Meadow Landing. And I have stated that on all my emails.
Yeah, we have sent through pictures in the past as well.
I just feel that, yeah, if it was one of us, we would collect a fine, which I've outlined a fine of, and what it says if you don't abide by those rules, it's a $500 a day proceeding. And he hasn't seemed to be abiding to any of that. And I also state that he does do work for you guys. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Now, petition. Mr. Paul Norman, would you like to present your petition?
Good afternoon to the President, Council, and staff of Harvey Council. Excuse me. My name is Paul Norman. I live 102 Herbert Road in Harvey, and I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak this petition. The petition was formed by speaking to every house that was available on a one-on-one basis and asking them if they agree with its aims to sign at their address. You all have a copy of the pages where the people have signed against their address. The last page of the petition is my approach to the council feedback meeting in 2018. Frustrated that with my approaches on this matter, that one major remark was, "It's only you whinging," with promises of support from the then CEO, local member and senior council employees. So here we are today. But today this petition speaks on behalf of all of the people on Herbert Road who signed the petition, not just me. Prior to this petition, I have directly approached local police, council, main roads, the local member of parliament, so I've been around the loop a few times. The police and local council have been as helpful as they could, given the resources, budget constraints, the speed humps that people have all passed over were all that we could afford at the time, and the police still have to catch the really bad guys with limited resources. The petition before you requests that the Harvey Shire Council, 1, initiates a plan to slow the speed on Herbert Road, a plan to slow the speed, and 2, initiates action to slow the speed on Herbert Road. The hoped outcome being the return of a safe and peaceful enjoyment of our street. The petition speaks of excessive speeds on our street, following traffic surveys by council. These reports have followed complaints from me, that whinging old bloke up the end of Herbert Road. He will know. I would like, beginning with page 1 there, the data shows 4,462 speeding offences, which is 27% of the traffic. The fact that 85% speed is 63.9 kilometres an hour is an acceptable level, which I know that's the standards or whatever that's set. That's not the point. This is a built-up area zoned 60 kilometre an hour by main roads that should be 50. This survey was done back in April 19, 22 days, so not today, but if you view the others, a similar story of speeding is there. And if you look at some of the speeds, maximum speed there, one of the guys, 147. He's back too. He uses a motorbike. Uduck Road to Hockhart Road, which is 2 kilometres. We have small children and large use by the elderly, because at the railway side of what's the name you have of Herbert Road, there's a whole elderly community there. When I set out for this petition signing, I wasn't sure how I'd be received. I was enthusiastically received by all the people. And feedback from all parts of the street suggests that speeding starts at Uduck Road and doesn't abate until they get to Hockhart Road. And it's been enforced by the speed things that you're reading there. And there's other add-ons as they come in from Young Street and Gershow and Fryer Road of a morning as well. So nearly all the conversation I had asked why the speed limit had been lifted. That's not a council decision. That was a Main Roads decision back in the early days. The speed humps are generally not thought to be as useful as they were, as now there's those wanting to speed can just drive through the middle. The white line helps guide them through, for those who don't know. So they can go through at about 90 or 100 kilometres an hour and then go hell for leather down the street. The traffic management at the 90-degree bend when you get down halfway is a major concern for those living nearby, with horror stories of cars sideways on the verge and near misses on trying to exit driveways. The speeding in both directions is severe. So they come down one way and do drifts around the corner, and if it's wet, off the road, and the other way, people are trying to get out of their driveway, coming down that corner, and people are doing obscene speeds coming in and out of that corner. When speaking to those on the section of Herbert Road near the railway line, the common complaint was speeding and the exposure particularly of the elderly, given its proximity to large area of elderly accommodation, who use Herbert Road to access the town centre. Many asked what was the solution. My response was, I and we are not traffic engineers and have to put our faith in the experts. I do have some personal views, as do others, but we'll leave that for another time. There are major concerns on some of the feeder roads, Gershow, Young, Fryer, but the focus of this petition is on Herbert Road. The people on those other streets complain like what's the name as well. There will be a need for further investigation, but in the end, the problem is speed, no question. And given the local police are, after my latest approach, about a week and a half ago, are conducting speed monitoring, their first 1 hour session, 3 fines and 2 warnings, without even trying. Their presence will skew any traffic monitoring we do in the short time, because there will have been a few people who have noticed that the cops were sitting on the corner with a gun, but as the sergeant points out, a week or so later, they'll all be back again anyway. He can't police the problem out. He said that's not a solution. The time and resources to do the monitoring and all that sort of thing may be spent better finding A, a plan to slow the speed on Herbert Road, and B, initiating action to slow the speed on Herbert Road. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Norman, for your petition. And as it says, in line with the Harvey Local Law Standing Orders 2017, section 6.10(2), the CEO will provide a report to Council addressing this petition. Mr. Arachi.
I listened to some of the concerns that were raised last week about Lot 77, and I would like to clarify some of them, right? There is no dust problem on Lot 77. It is all lawn. It has taken us years to establish lawn on 77, therefore there would be no cultivation of the soil, and in turn, no dust would be created. We have spent a lot of money on hot mix and concrete surrounding the business to minimise dust. Engine and transmission overhauls are very sensitive to dust. I even hot mixed the neighbour's driveway to the east of the building to prevent dust. The machines that will be tested on this lot are ride-on lawn mowers, hay mowers and hay balers that need to be run after repairs. Again, no dust. Customers on some occasions like to drive tractors on the lot to try different transmissions. Again, there is no dust and very little noise. Depending on workloads and customer prospects, this may take place weekly. The residents who have built their homes on Carrigacup Avenue and 6th Street knew Harvey Farm Service was there. We have been there 45 odd years. In that time, I have personally never received a complaint, though it seems apparent when the council asked questions there were some concerns. But I think that's just human nature. And they don't need us, but farmers and businesses do. After speaking to the residents, their concerns seem to be the noise our tractors and large mowers make when we're mowing the lawn. We have 5 acres of lawn. We are not going to do it with a walk behind mower. Mowing takes place approximately every 2 weeks. In regards to the buffer zone, it was my suggestion. It was not mentioned by council or residents. My preference would be to plant 2 extra rows of trees on the south boundary, as I have on the west. But some years ago, Harvey Water approached me and explained because of the extra housing on the street, they needed to lay a larger pipe. And instead of disrupting the neighbours and digging up their backyards, fences, chook pens, etc., etc., they asked if they could use a section of my property. To which I agreed, right? This pipeline now prevents me from planting those extra trees. If required, I'm prepared to erect a colour-blind fence on the south boundary, where the houses, with the boundary of the houses, but I don't think there's any need to put a fence on the west side because there is 6th Street and there's no houses opposite. On the north side, we have a tree line and Harvey Farm Service own the land on that side. There is nothing to prevent neighbours planting a row of trees on their own properties. These residents chose to live in an area with farms on 4 sides of them. They have to expect to hear normal farm machinery noise. Thank you. No question?
Thank you. Is there any?
No?
Okay, now, as the 24th of November is the 100th anniversary of the first woman who was elected to local government in WA, Councillor Lovett will just give a brief presentation pertaining to that.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this, Shire President Paul Gillett, for giving me the opportunity to share this information today. I love history, and in particular family history, and so a few months ago it was a pleasure to do some research into the life of Councillor Elizabeth Clapham, who was the first woman elected to local government in Western Australia on this day 100 years ago. Elizabeth's maiden name was Morgan. She married John Clapham and they came from England to Western Australia. Like many women before and since, she made her husband's name famous. Elizabeth devoted her life to John, to the union movement and to civic life. She was an extraordinarily strong woman. She had no children, and socially in that era that would have been a challenge as well as perhaps a personal sadness. Her brother, her only other family here in Western Australia, murdered his wife and son before taking his own life on a farm in the small town of Corder. Today we still know the flow-on effect that these events have in the life of a family. In my own case, I remember in vivid detail an afternoon in April 1979 when my grandmother delivered the news that one of my cousins had committed the exact same crime. Elizabeth's husband died in 1928, leaving her a widow with no family left here in WA after her brother's death. Her thirst for knowledge and information saw her challenge the likes of Mrs. Jean Beadle and Lady Edith Cowan on their opinions in women's matters. She nominated for federal parliament in 1922 after being in local government for 2 years. She was very ambitious and very determined. She travelled alone to Italy for the International Women's Congress. Elizabeth returned to the UK to live her final years. Her 20 years in Western Australia were full of both wonderful achievements and also significant personal sadness. Not surprising that she returned to somewhere with happier memories and connections. Her headstone, that of the woman of Western Australia's first woman elected to local government, has gone the way of many thousands of others at Karrakatta by being renewed. It was taken from her grave at Karrakatta and placed in a different part of the cemetery. So today is the 100th anniversary of her election to the North Ward of the town of Cottesloe. Our Shire has been privileged to have 2 female Shire presidents in Maddie Smith and Tanya Jackson. We have significant numbers of female councillors and have our first female CEO, with a number of women now in key executive roles. Across the state local government, female participation rates average in the high 30% figures. It's not equal, but it's often lacking in diversity, but we are making huge steps. But today, on the 100th anniversary of her election, we shall continue to uphold Elizabeth's life and her mantra of upward and onward as we celebrate her contribution to Western Australia.
Thank you, Councillor Lovett. Item 9, announcements by presiding member or CEO without discussion. I would just like to put on the record a big thanks to all of our volunteers, and especially throughout this year. But it was on the 14th of November, it was certainly great to see councillors at the opening of the new Binningup Volunteer Bush Fire Brigade and the Australind SES building within the Shire. They'll be certainly a great asset. Also a big thank you to the staff who have been heavily involved in both of those two projects. It's a great outcome for our volunteers and certainly look forward to more to come. Item 10, confirmation of minutes. The confirmation of minutes of the ordinary council meeting on Tuesday the 27th of October 2020. If someone move that they be a true and correct record of proceedings. Thank you. Councillor Adams. Seconder, Councillor Dickinson. Is there any questions or any queries? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 11, receipt of minutes and recommendations from committees. Nil. Item 12, officers' reports. Item 12.1.1. Note that Councillor Jackson has declared a financial interest and will leave the chambers. We have the officer recommendation on page 11. Move Councillor Bromham. Seconder, Councillor Burgoyne. Is there anyone wishing to speak against the motion at all? No? Okay. Well, put the motion. Is there anyone against the motion? The motion is carried 12-0. We have just bring Councillor Jackson back into the room, please. Thanks, Amy. Officer recommendation was passed as written. Councillor Jackson. Okay, item 12.1.2, Shire of Harvey Delegations Register. I'll pass over to the Governance Officer.
Through the Chair, Council, in front of you we've printed a new delegations register which has some changes to the numbering. On the 7th of November, amendments were made to the Local Government Act, section 9.10, which essentially gave the authority to the CEO to exercise the functions conferred in 1.2.1, which is the change. It used to be 1.1.1. The wording of the delegation is the same, but for best governance practice, we've put it down under a new section in the register. We've also given you some guidance notes in relation to the other amendments that occurred at the same time. If you have any questions.
Councillor Beach.
I'll move the motion, Mr. Chair, if that's okay, with some slight amendments that I've previously sent through, so hopefully you can get them on the screen.
Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Boylan. Councillor Beach.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councillor Boylan, for giving me the opportunity. I don't know whether I'm being pedantic by just requesting these slight amendments to the register. But the first one is the 1.1.6, defer, waive and write off debts. And I'm suggesting that if that delegation is exercised, perhaps quarterly, because I know that we write off a fair few minor debts for library books and vehicles collected on the roadside and so forth, that the CEO just provides council with a report. Part of our governance role to look after the finances of this council, and I just think that if we got the report and we can just check off that everything's going okay, not that casting any aspersions on anybody. As I say, it's just part of our governance role to look after the finances, and I think this condition will do just that. The second one is a little bit more depth, is to remove delegation 6.1.5. It's concerned with debt recovery and prosecutions. I think it was under the Food Act, if memory serves me rightly. Yeah, under the Food Act of 2008. What concerns me, Mr. Chair, is that once we start heading down prosecution roads, I get quite twitchy. And I'm not sure that it's always a necessary avenue that we should take. And I've been advised I can't put a line in there to say that the item comes to council, because otherwise, if that happens, then there's no delegation. So it's either we agree with the delegation and let the CEO use those powers that we would like to delegate to her, or it's removed and any prosecutions come to this council. My preference, and I'm not sure I speak for everybody, but my preference is any prosecutions that are undertaken, I think should be endorsed by council. One, it gives us control, and two, I think it protects the staff, to be quite honest. So with that in mind, I would put that forward. And I struggled a little bit last week when I received the manual with the delegations in and going through absolutely every one of them. And I thought I picked them all up, but other people raised stuff up that I'd missed. So it's not an easy document to read and to fully understand. So with that in mind, I've put in the line there, item 3, that requests the Chief Executive Officer to conduct a workshop on the complete delegation register with the ins and outs and the amendments that might take place during the course of a year. So part of the annual review, but not for this particular one, because obviously time's against us, but starting next year, this time next year probably, in 2021. So those are my reasons for moving that amendment. As I said, might be a little bit pedantic on my part. I just think it dots the I's and crosses the T's. Thank you.
Just before Councillor Beach, would you like to just amend to, and from 1.1.6, it's now the new number is 1.1.5? Yeah, if as a mover and the seconder. Okay, is there a speaker against the motion? Okay, I will put the motion. Councillor Adams, do you have...
I speak against it, but I picked up the point about prosecutions being brought to council, and I think that's important. I'm not quite sure sort of how to alter that, but I certainly, yes, I would want to see prosecutions brought to us for.
Yeah, thank you. My advice is that if this is removed, then prosecutions would come to council as part of a report. I wanted just to change the delegation to say that they come to council. Then I was advised, well, if it comes to council, it's no longer a delegation. So that's why I've been advised, and I've taken staff's advice, that it is removed. And so therefore, if staff believe we need to go down the road of a prosecution or recommend a prosecution, I'm assuming that is what the procedure would be.
Yes, that is correct. Councillor Bromham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a question. The way I understand it is that if we were to go to prosecution, obviously there is a matter of law as far as any prosecution is concerned. and therefore I don't see the reason why we bring it to council if staff were actually complying with the law and the requirements of the law under that specific purpose. Am I right on that, or am I type of?
There is an element of discretion there, so we don't necessarily have to prosecute someone. Yeah, I probably would refer to a health officer if they were in the room, to give an example of when that may occur. But there is definitely an element of discretion as to if we prosecute. Yeah.
So, in that event, would that be? Wouldn't staff, look at that in that regard and say, well, in this area we would prosecute, in that area we wouldn't? If someone continued to break the law, well, I suppose, we would prosecute, but if they didn't and came to some conclusion, then staff would make that decision.
As you've mentioned, or as the Manager of Governance has mentioned, there is discretion, and every individual case is assessed on its merits. In regards to prosecution, we do have the ability also to obtain legal advice, but if that is the decision of council that they need to come to council for a decision, then staff can do that.
Are there any other speakers for? Any speakers against? Councillor Beach.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in summing up, the comments are quite valid. It's just that I feel that if a prosecution is considered, the staff can bring that to this council and say, look, these are the avenues that we can go down. We can do A or B or C, or do none of the above and let the matter rest. So I think it provides a degree of protection to the staff. It's certainly, we're out in the community, and if someone is lined up and prosecuted and we don't know anything about it, it makes us look fairly ordinary. As I said, I'm not one for prosecution per se, and as I said in my opening speech, it's probably been a little bit pedantic, but I would like to think that if someone had gone so far, that just a short report to council explaining the reasons why this action is going to be taken is not too big of an ask. Therefore, I'd ask that that delegation be removed.
Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? 3? 4? 5 against. Okay, motion's carried. Absolute majority. 8, 5. Anyone? Okay, item 12.1.3, recording of council meetings. Officer recommendation is page 20. Councillor Adams moving. Councillor Dickinson seconding. Speak. Okay. Do you wish to speak for the motion, Councillor Adams? No, I don't. No. Speaker against, Councillor Kabani.
Thank you, Madam President. I suppose it's Mr. President.
That's all right, Madam Councillor.
Your hair's getting long. I suppose it's no surprise that I'll get up and speak against it. And I understand that there's some councillors that like to feel all warm and fuzzy that we're all accountable and we're on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, but I'd just like to use my democratic right as to why I think these council meetings shouldn't be televised. And we've had a case tonight where Councillor Jackson just left the room over an issue on tourism. And what if one of our, and even though the item wasn't discussed while she was out of the room, what if it was? And what if we wanted to express our views against Councillor Jackson or something that her business or implications of the tourism policy? She's got the ability to go back and see what everyone has said in this room, whether it be for her or against her or whatever. And it's been the same, obviously, in my case. And that's why I'm against this, because I think it's going to have undue influence on councillors' decisions in this place, and more importantly, what people can freely and openly say in this place. Now, we're not protected by parliamentary privilege in this place. We're not like state and federal parliament where we're exempt from prosecution. And I myself have been the subject of a number of complaints of what's been said in here as a direct result of being televised. And I don't think I've said anything. Haven't killed anyone or said anything to bring anyone down, but I've been the subject of complaints with Walga, and that they've been dismissed. Fair enough, but I think it affects the way that we speak in this place. It just gives people rise, the keyboard warriors of the world, and hell, there's plenty of them at the moment, to get and then lodge complaints or petitions or come forward and do things. So I think it puts undue pressure on everyone. I realise I'm on a hiding to nothing here, but I'm just going to put my case anyway.
There a speaker for the motion? Any other speakers against? Councillor Adams, you obviously don't want to.
Yes,
finish.
I'm not at all surprised that Councillor Carbone speaks with such passion on the subject, but I think he's sort of lost the thread a bit, in as much as we are, to all intents and purposes, an open council. To all intents and purposes, the whole public gallery could be chock-a-block every week. As it is, it's on the TV. And it gives a lot more people the opportunity to see how their local government works. Councillor Jackson was used as an example. The guts of the matter is that Councillor Jackson doesn't contribute to the discussion, and that really is the whole point of the thing. So no, I have no problem in as much as, yeah, if I'm going to say something that's going to libel somebody, I've got to learn to button my lip at council meetings. Sometimes I find that difficult, but yeah, no problem at all.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? 3 against? Okay, motion is carried. Item 12.1.4, Harvey Community Precinct Redevelopment. We have the recommendation on page 22. That's a confidential attachment pertaining to this. We have moved Councillor Lovett, second Councillor Beach. Is anyone wishing to speak against at all? Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Councillor Bromham, question?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just this is the hub, isn't it?
No, the precinct now. It's a precinct.
Oh, the precinct.
Yep.
Yep. I'd just like to. I think the whole plan is a good idea, but I believe it should also incorporate what we're going to do at the Australian end of the Shire as well. So rather than just being a precinct per se, that it's a precinct as in for local government, and rather than just saying, yeah, we're going to look at this side of it too, that we should have it somewhere in writing.
Did you want to move an amendment, Councillor Bromham, or just... Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. 13-0. Okay, item 12.1.5, Designated Area Migration Agreement. We have an officer recommendation on page 25. Councillor Dickinson. Are there any speakers against? Would you like to speak for the motion, Councillor Jackson? No. Speakers against, Councillor Adams.
Yeah, I made my point last week and I'll make it again. That with all the unemployment that we have in this country, in this state, The fact that and I'm disappointed that Nola Marino is involved in it, but we're still talking about bringing people in. To me, it's immoral almost. Somebody mentioned doctors. Well, come on, we're not talking about doctors. We're talking about ordinary people. And if we can't get our act together and train people up and fill these vacancies, well, I'll walk north. I'm against it.
Councillor Bromham. Speaker for the motion. Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is in relation to professionals as well as possibly unskilled labour, and there are times when employers do have difficulty after advertising positions for long periods of time to get those positions filled. I know of numerous employers in the Harvey Shire that have been in that situation. So I therefore support this motion.
Speaker against. Councillor Bromham.
Mr. President, I believe that what we've done is we've allowed industries generally to move down a track where we're importing cheap labour and we've come reliant on it. And I don't think that's going to be sustainable into the long-term future. And all it does is drive down wages in Australia for ordinary workers. So even though I think probably at the present time, and I think Councillor Dickinson is quite correct in that we may need to have these people at the moment to support our industries, I think that we should be also looking at how we make employment in Australia in these industries as sustainable for Australians. Thank you.
Is there any other speaker for? Councillor Beach.
Yeah, I'll speak for much the same line as Councillor Dickinson. Harvey Town itself has gone through quite a change to its society, the mix of nationalities we've got up there, particularly now with the people from the Philippines and the Kiwis and so forth, and they're all holding down reasonably paid jobs at the milk factory, the juice factory, the meat works and so forth. I'm involved in quite a large project, and I've been approached on several occasions over the last few weeks, do I know of any labourers? And I've put the call out and we've not been able to get a labourer, you know, at $20 an hour or whatever they pay, $25 an hour. There is, the figures are saying there's large amounts of unemployment. They're certainly not around where I'm operating from, I can tell you. So if this means that people can get jobs and fulfil jobs that are vacant, and particularly in the agricultural industry that we know, I know some of that might be seasonal work, but the seasons change, they move north, move south as they go. I support it, and I think that the work is there, the work needs to be done, and if we haven't got any local people that are willing to put up their hand, well then you've lost your opportunity.
Any other speaker against? Speakers for? Councillor Burgoyne.
If I can just, pardon me, throw my two bobs worth in. If we read a report, it says DARMAs are designed to provide solutions to Australian businesses where there are skills gaps and shortages that cannot be met by the Australian market. Now, COVID hit in March. The first meeting was on the 4th of November 2019. It's not a new thing. It's been ongoing for quite some time. This is an ends to the means. Means to an end. That might be better. But the fact of the matter was that for quite some time we've had a shortage of certain skills. So if this is a way of overcoming those shortage of skills, you say retrain the people. Well, the people didn't want to be trained back in 2019. I'm not entirely sure they're going to want to be trained now. So I'll support this.
Any other speaker against? Speaker for? Councillor Jackson, would you like to?
Yes, thank you. It isn't a new problem, but I think this year we've seen how it plays out when you don't have access to those people that come to our country for the work. And I think that should be explanation in itself that this is a problem that we have to deal with. I do believe that this agreement will give us the chance to be part of that solution in our region. And Councillor Beach mentioned in the Harvey region where there is a high proportion of people coming from overseas to work in some of our industries that simply find it hard to attract those people for the type of work. So I think that this will allow us to be part of a strategy that fixes a long-term problem, and I compel you to support that.
Okay, I'll put the motion. Is there anyone against the motion? One. Motion is carried 12-1. Item 12, Infrastructure Services. Item 12.2.1, Rig Road Mile Up, proposed no stopping parking restrictions. The officer recommendation is on page 27. Councillor Burgoyne moving. Councillor Bromham second. Likely to be any speaker against. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.2.2, proposed new path, Southwest Highway between Uduck Road and Hinge Road. We have officer recommendation on page 30. Councillor Dickinson moving, Councillor Beach second. Speakers against. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.2.3, Community Open Space Binning Up, Landscaping. Have an officer recommendation on page 34. Move Councillor Bromham. Seconder, Councillor Coleman. Likely to be any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.2.4, Better Bins Plus, Go Fogo Curbside Collection Program. We have an officer recommendation on page 41. Councillor Adams.
I endorse the recommendation.
Moving? Move the motion, Councillor Adams. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Burgoyne. Likely to be anyone against? So if I put the motion, is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.3.1, extension to existing use not listed, farm machinery sales and servicing. We have officer recommendation on page 49 and 50. Councillor Adams moving, Councillor Beach second.
Yeah, could I have a question also, please?
Yes, Councillor Beach.
Just for the record, I'll ask the planning officer. List of conditions, item number 6. I asked this question earlier. I was satisfied with the answer, but I think council should understand where we're getting at. It says prior to the commencement of the approved use, a 1.8 metre colour-bond screening fence required by condition 3A shall be installed and thereafter maintained to the satisfaction of the Shire. My question is, if the landowners that are affected, so that's the 6 lots on Critticup Avenue, backing on to the subject lot, decided that they didn't want the fence, Mr. Arachi is not compelled to do it, but there is a procedure he might have to go through, is that correct?
Through the chair. Yes, so if that condition is imposed and their neighbouring properties decide they don't want the fence anymore, then the applicant can apply to amend the approval, and that condition and 3A can be requested to be removed from that approval.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there Anyone likely to speak against the motion? So I'll put the motion. Is anyone against? Motion is carried. Sustainable development. Item 12.3.2, Local Development Plan Stage 1, Eden Life Communities. We have a officer recommendation on page 57. Move Councillor Burgoyne, second Councillor Dickinson. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.3.3, application for a use not listed animal establishment. Have an officer recommendation on page 63. Have moved Councillor Bromham. Second, Councillor Campbell. Any discussions? Okay. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.3.4, approval of a shed to a dwelling. We have an officer recommendation on page 66. Move Councillor Lovett. Seconder. Councillor Coleman. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.3.5, proposed local road naming and renaming for road alignments affected by the Bunbury Outer Ring Road. Have an officer recommendation on page 71. Councillor Burgoyne, moving. Seconder. Councillor Dickinson. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.3.6, proposed tourism development strategy and visitor servicing. Councillor Jackson has declared a financial interest and will leave the chambers. So we have a officer recommendation on page 75 and 76. Have a mover. Councillor Adams, Councillor Bromham, second. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Thanks, Amy. Recommendation was carried as per written. Councillor Jackson. Corporate services. Item 12.4.1, listing of accounts paid September 2020. That's the recommendation on page 78. Councillor Simpson moving. Second, Councillor Campbell. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.4.2, financial statements as at 30th of September 2020. Recommendation on page 81. Councillor Coleman moving. Councillor Simpson second. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Community and lifestyle. Item 12.5.1, the boundary, Harvey Community and Sporting Facility, proposed MOU. We have Officer recommendation on page 84. Councillor Beach moving, Councillor Burgoyne second. Is there any discussions, any queries? No. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.5.2, Australia Day Awards 2021. We have a recommendation on page 86. Councillor Burgoyne, Councillor Coleman seconding. Like to be any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Oh, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I just have a quick question, if I may. Just going back to item 12.1.4 in relation to the Harvey Community Precinct redevelopment. Just noting Councillor Brom's comments, I know that he didn't move an alternate motion. He made a comment, and I was just wondering how, if at all, though that information, or that comment was going to be recorded, or if it wasn't. Certainly it's on video, and it's my understanding on the new policy that's been adopted this evening that it will be kept for 12 months. But I'm just, and so will it be taken down from YouTube in 12 months' time and not be available, or will it be available forever? Hence my question as to whether Councillor Bromham's comments are going to be will actually be recorded into the future or not.
In regards to Councillor Bromham's comments, they are just comments and they won't be recorded in the minutes. In regards to the recording, they will be taken down after 12 months, and it's not a record of council after that time. Is that correct?
Yes, the standard record keeping authority for that item is 12 months, so it can be destroyed thereafter. Yeah.
Okay, item 13, elected members' motions of which previous notice has been given is nil. Item 14, notice of motion for the following meeting. Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yeah, I have a motion for next week, the next meeting, and it reads that Council, addressing the concerns of staff with regard to the unhealthy, overcrowded and allegedly dangerous conditions under which they work in an office considered entirely unfit for purpose, that we authorise the CEO to repurpose the demountable structure currently serving as the Harvey Council Chamber into office space with a view to assisting to alleviate the current office accommodation problem. This repurposing should be seen as an interim measure pending the building of a new office complex in the proposed Harvey Town Centre precinct. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Item 15, questions by members of which due notice has been given. It's nil. Item 16, reports of members. Anyone, any special ones that anyone wants to announce? They're all in the big... Oh, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I just want to use this opportunity to acknowledge the efforts of the Leisure Progress Association in organising the Leisure Community Day on the 7th of November. This is a small community group, and they put together an outstanding event on the afternoon, and it was really well attended by the community. So well done to the Leisure Progress Association and also to the Shire staff for assisting.
Councillor Bromham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was remiss of not reporting from the Worsley meeting. It's interesting how Worsley have started to be interested more in the Harvey Shire, and they're actually looking at helping us in a variety of different ways. So as our strategies become put in place, I think we might be able to gain some funding from that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bronwyn. Councillor Adams, you got your light on.
Yes, I, along with several other people, of course, attended both the opening of the new tavern and a wonderful establishment and a long time coming and very badly needed, and also the Australian SES building there. One disappointment, though, Mr. President, that what a wonderful opportunity to have used timber for all those trusses and work there. I think we've lost the opportunity, and I hope that when we build the new precinct that we will be using a lot more timber. Thank you very much.
Item 17, seal register. Officer recommendation on page 7. Councillor Beach, Councillor Lovett seconding. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 18, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of meeting. Nil. Item 19, matters behind closed doors. Move Councillor Burgoyne. Second, Councillor Campbell. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Yep. Okay. Councillor Adams. Okay. Item 20, closure of the meeting. I'll declare the meeting closed at 5:23 and thank everyone for their attendance. Thank you.